The picture looked like something out of a dream, sunlight spilling across white sands, a perfect ocean view stretching beyond the French windows, and in the foreground, Will Spencer with his arms wrapped around Electra Forrester, both of them radiant, smiling, and barefoot in their new beachside sanctuary. It was the kind of image meant to signal peace, healing, and a new beginning. But for Luna Nozawa, sitting on a cold metal bench in a prison recreation yard, staring at the viral post someone had shown her on a contraband phone, it was a dagger to the chest. Her stomach tightened beneath the oversized sweatshirt she wore, the child growing inside her pressing against her ribs like a constant reminder that there was no peace for her, no sanctuary, no redemption. Only memories, questions, and the echoing silence of a life that had moved on without her. Her lips trembled, but she made no sound. Her tears had dried weeks ago. What filled her now was something darker, hotter, a slow, rising storm of desperation. She stood up without a word, her mind already racing through the details of a plan she had long kept buried. For days, she had felt something simmering inside her, a ticking clock, a sense that time was running out. But seeing that photo was the breaking point. She couldn't bear it any longer. Not the humiliation, not the silence, and certainly not the thought that the man whose child she might be carrying was now building a future with someone else. So she made her choice. She would escape, and she would make them remember. The next 48 hours unfolded like the calm before an earthquake. Luna kept to herself, speaking less, eating less, and silently observing the routines of every guard, every schedule rotation, every blind spot in the security system. She befriended a woman known for inciting chaos, a woman with nothing left to lose, and whispered to her just enough poison to guarantee a riot. The night of the full moon, when tensions ran highest and the air inside the prison walls was thick with violence, the plan ignited. A fight broke out in the common area. Then another. Alarms blared. Guards scattered. And Luna, wrapped in stolen scrubs and bloodied to avoid suspicion, slipped into the confusion and vanished into the darkness, like a ghost.
By dawn, she was gone.
Los Angeles was waking up under its usual haze of ambition and illusion when Luna crossed the county line. Her belly had grown. Her gait was slower, but her eyes burned with purpose. No one knew she had escaped, not yet. And that gave her time. Time to disappear into the spaces no one looked. Time to watch. Time to haunt. She didn't go to any of her old haunts. She knew better. Instead, she rented a small studio apartment under a fake name and began her silent return by doing what she knew best, listening. She watched Electra first, parked across the street from the beach house, binoculars in hand, tracking her movements with icy precision. Electra's every smile, every kiss, every hand laid gently on Will's shoulder was like acid in Luna's throat. But what disturbed her more, what awakened something savage, was how happy Will looked. Had he truly forgotten? Had she meant nothing? Luna waited. She knew Will was active on social media. And late one night, she created a fake account and messaged him. Not directly. Just anonymously. One message. One sentence. Do you really remember what happened that night? No name. No context. But it was enough. Will read it alone in his study, the glow of the screen reflecting a flicker of something that had never quite died in him. Uncertainty. He had told himself again and again that the night with Luna had been a violation. That he hadn't wanted it. That she had manipulated him in a moment of weakness. But deep down there were gaps. Blurred memories. He had never admitted it, not even to Electra, but there were parts of that night that refused to settle into clarity. The message pulled at those threads. He replied, "Who is this?" But no response came. Only silence. And with it, the seed of doubt. The next morning, Electra noticed the change in him. Will was distant, distracted. He said he was tired, that work had been stressful, but the truth was growing like a shadow between them. She kissed his cheek before she left for the foundation gala, but even that felt off. He was slipping. And Luna knew it. She followed Electra to the event, watched her step onto the red carpet, cameras flashing, pearls around her neck, grace in every movement. She watched how others admired her, how Will's name came up in conversations like a badge of honor. Elektra had become part of a legacy now, part Spencer, part Forrester, adored by the media, feared by competitors. And Luna, watching from the shadows in a borrowed dress and cheap sunglasses, felt invisible, forgotten, but not for long. That night, she left something on Will's car. A copy of the security footage from the night in question, smuggled out before her arrest, still grainy, still unclear, but just enough to cast doubt. She didn't watch it herself. She couldn't.
But she knew what it suggested.
Two figures, a dimly lit hallway, lips colliding, hands pulling. Was it aggression? Was it passion? It was impossible to tell. But it was enough to make Will question everything. Again. When he found it, he went still. He played it once. Then again. Then again. He didn't speak to anyone for hours. And when Elektra returned home that night, she found him standing on the balcony, eyes red, hands trembling. She asked what was wrong, and he said nothing. But the silence spoke volumes. The next few days became a slow unraveling. Will began withdrawing from Elektra, using work as an excuse. Elektra, sensing something deeper, pushed harder. But the more she pushed, the more he recoiled. And all the while, Luna watched from a distance, orchestrating her masterpiece. Because now, Will wasn't sure if Luna had been his attacker, or something else entirely. And Elektra, who had fought so hard to save him, was beginning to realize that love might not be enough to survive a past that refused to stay buried. The baby's due date approached. And with it, the reckoning. Because the truth, the real, unvarnished truth, about that night had yet to be told. And Luna had one last card to play. There are storms that roar in the sky, and then there are those that build slowly within the human heart, unseen, quiet at first, until the damage is irreversible. For Elektra Forrester, the latter had become her daily reality. Every time she looked into Will Spencer's eyes, she saw a man she loved, deeply, unwaveringly, but behind his tenderness, behind the strength he tried so hard to project, lay a haunting truth neither of them could truly escape. Luna Nozawa was carrying his child. That fact lived in the shadows of their relationship now, breathing down Elektra's neck every morning she woke up next to him, tainting every moment that should have been sweet with a bitterness she fought to conceal. At first, she told herself she could handle it. She told herself that love, real love, was made for moments like these. That endurance was proof of commitment. That her strength could hold them both upright. But the cracks were beginning to show. They started small. Sleepless nights. Cold hands. Silent meals. A hesitation in her voice when Will touched her. A pause in her eyes when he said her name with affection that once thrilled her. Will had become gentler, more careful around her. Too careful. As if he sensed she was nearing a breaking point, and any wrong move might shatter her entirely. But what neither of them said out loud was what hung most dangerously between them. Luna's presence was not fading. It was growing. With every passing week, her pregnancy progressed, and the reality of the child that would tie them all together forever crept closer. And it wasn't just the baby. It was the memory of what happened. Luna hadn't been a lover. She had been a force that overwhelmed Will during one of the darkest moments of his life. The word Elektra could never bring herself to say aloud, rape, lingered in her mind constantly. The knowledge that this child wasn't born of love, or choice, or even mistake, but of violation, made it harder for her to imagine a future unmarred by pain. Will, for his part, never blamed himself, but he carried the scars nonetheless. And Elektra, torn between compassion and exhaustion, had no one to confess her full anguish to. She tried to hold it in. She smiled for the cameras, showed up at Forrester events, performed grace with the poise of her lineage. But privately, she found herself pulling away. From Will. From herself. And one afternoon, after leaving a doctor's appointment alone, an appointment she'd insisted Will didn't need to attend, She sat in her car and wept for 20 minutes straight. Not because she didn't love him, but because she was terrified that one day she wouldn't be able to anymore. Meanwhile, across town, Luna remained under surveillance. The court had allowed her to remain in a medical holding facility pending birth, but that hadn't stopped the gossip from spreading. Katie Logan had paid her a visit. The encounter was cold, clipped, strategic. Katie didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She simply told Luna, with all the confidence of a mother protecting her own, that she and Bill would fight for full custody the moment the baby was born. And Luna, resting a trembling hand over her abdomen, nodded without protest. There were no more illusions of winning, only survival. But something in Katie had shifted after that visit. She hadn't expected to see fear in Luna's eyes. She had expected rage, defiance. She hadn't anticipated that Luna would look lost. And though she never admitted it, something in Katie softened. For one fleeting moment, she saw a girl not so different from herself once upon a time, swallowed by the consequences of a love that never should have existed. Back at the Cliff House, the drama of Electra and Will's unraveling love was only one part of the emotional avalanche waiting to strike. Deacon Sharp, ever the complicated soul, had begun to seek comfort in a place few had expected, Taylor Hayes. Their connection had always lingered in the background, restrained by circumstance and timing. But lately, it had begun to evolve into something more delicate and real. Taylor saw in Deacon a man trying to redeem himself, not only in the eyes of others, but in the eyes of the woman he married, Sheila. Sheila, for her part, was riding the tide of borrowed peace. Taylor had, in her way, protected Sheila's marriage. By refusing to testify against her or sabotage her fragile bond with Deacon, Taylor had bought Sheila more time she intended to use wisely. Or at least, that's what she told herself. She even prepared a lunch surprise for Taylor, hoping to thank her in the only way Sheila knew how, by inserting herself into her life. But when Sheila arrived, the sight she stumbled upon wasn't what she'd expected. Deacon and Taylor. Close. Smiling. Their hands nearly touching. It was enough to still her breath and awaken the dragon inside her. Sheila didn't say a word. She turned around and left before they noticed. But a storm had already begun to form behind her eyes. Betrayal had always been her trigger, and she'd just seen enough to start setting fire to whatever peace remained. Taylor had crossed an invisible line. Whether or not Deacon loved her didn't matter. What mattered was the betrayal of gratitude. And in Sheila's world, kindness demanded loyalty. Anything less was treason. In the days that followed, Electra began to grow increasingly withdrawn. Will noticed. Of course he did. He tried to pull her back, flowers, dinner, plans for the beach house Bill had offered them. But nothing worked. The woman he loved was drifting, and no matter how close he stood, he couldn't hold her. The baby loomed between them like a phantom neither of them could name. And for Electra, the guilt of being unable to fully forgive him was starting to curdle into resentment. She hated that Luna was still alive. That Luna was still part of their story. That Luna, in some twisted cosmic irony, would give birth to Will's child while Electra bore the burden of his trauma. She told herself she wasn't cruel, but her thoughts were beginning to betray her. And then came the night she drove to the prison. Alone. She didn't plan it. She didn't call anyone. She just went, sat in the parking lot, stared at the lights through her windshield, wondered if Luna was awake, wondered if she knew what she had done, wondered if she would ever feel remorse. Then she imagined the baby, innocent, unaware, and for a moment, her heart twisted. How could something born of violence be innocent? How could she raise a child that wasn't hers, that was the product of someone else's nightmare?